Heading into the 4th of July, firefighters told us they thought that attitudes about fireworks might be changing, after 2 suburban towns burned 6 months ago. But no, illegal fireworks still filled the sky last night. West Metro firefighters had 3 times their usual number of fireworks sparked fires. On the south side of town, the fireworks kept booming in a neighborhood that was being evacuated by a fireworks-started fire. Our Steve Steger looks at what happens when fireworks are illegal, but the law is not enforced.
The firework was in the air, and then it hit, and then it literally was, it just went up in seconds.
5 seconds of someone's joy.
Yeah, super scary.
Quickly became hours of chaos for an entire block.
Like, how fast is this going to go? What's going to happen? Are they going to be able to stop it?
Carly Williams is one of a handful of neighbors on Himalaya in Arapahoe County, evacuated last night.
And then just kind of get out as fast as you can, but you really can't grab much.
As a fireworks-sparked wildfire grew and inched closer to her house.
It was growing fast.
Yet as deputies raced to get people out and fire crews stood up against the flames.
And it was fireworks everywhere.
Neighbors wouldn't stop.
And it was another house up further that was still lighting them off, and I just looked at him like, what are you doing? Do you not just see what happened?
You might be thinking the same thing we did. Fireworks that leave the ground are illegal in Colorado. Police had to be busy writing tickets last night, right? Wrong. Denver, Adams County, and Douglas County each wrote 1 citation respectively. Arapahoe County, where this fire sparked, wrote none.
It's just difficult.
Deputy Justin Dillard was out patrolling Arapahoe County last night.
Well, first of all, we need to see it. So we have a lot of calls that are like, hey, we see fireworks, we drive the area, we don't see anything.
And that's the east side.
He says it's a tough law to enforce.
Trying to investigate to find out who and when and the what for a petty offense isn't the highest priority with the other things that we have going on at the time.
Plus, it's just a municipal ticket with a fine.
So I'd write you a ticket and I'd leave, and chances are you'd probably just keep going if you wanted to anyway.
I think that a higher fine.
Williams, who has now seen the impacts firsthand, says it may be time to think about changing that.
Check IDs at the fireworks stand is one of my other ideas. Like, okay, you're from Colorado, you can't buy these. It's illegal in your state.
Jefferson County wrote the most tickets of all the police agencies we heard from today, 23. They also confiscated about 400 pounds of fireworks. Deputy Dillard told us that people taking the law into their own hands, trying to tell their neighbors off, actually creates more issues like disorderly conduct, which keeps cops busy doing something else, Kyle, than enforcing the fireworks law. He said that there was one case last night in Arapahoe County where it was like disorderly conduct, reckless driving. Some guy who was so upset to yell at these people that really, he said that guy ended up putting everybody else in more danger than the fireworks did, which maybe.
It seems like in a lot of jurisdictions around the metro area, the message to citizens is if you dislike the fireworks, you should leave town. Because really we're not going to do much about it in a lot of places.
Yeah, and it's basically like call this hotline, we may not come out and respond to it. Or it's talk to your neighbors and have a peaceful conversation, but we've seen how well that goes in some of these situations. So until there might be a little bit more teeth in this law, it'll be interesting to see if this just keeps growing and growing every year.
Yeah, encouraging people to confront their liquored up neighbors who are shooting off fireworks does not seem advisable to me. All right, Steve, thank you. With law enforcement in parts of the Denver metro area deciding not to issue citations for fireworks, that shifts the burden onto firefighters. It's up to firefighters to plead with people not to set things on fire. And then it's up to firefighters to save homes and lives when their warnings are inevitably ignored. Coloradans sure like to talk about respecting and honoring firefighters. What we saw specifically in Aurora last night, though, was pretty depraved. People were setting off fireworks around firefighters as they battled to contain a wildfire before it could reach homes. The flames and the smoke plume were quite visible in the neighborhood, so there's no excuse saying, well, people didn't know their neighborhood was on fire at the time. And you can bet that firefighters saw and heard that disrespect while they were out there trying to save lives and property. Shooting fireworks off over the heads of firefighters while they're trying to save a neighborhood from burning is a pretty perfect example of a perverse vision of what American freedom means, valuing the pursuit of your own happiness over the lives of firefighters and your neighbors. That's not being an American, that is being a child in a grown-up's body. And firing off fresh fireworks once a fire's already burning nearby is waving a flag of stupidity for all the rest of us to see. To the firefighters' credit, they did not take notes on which people's homes deserved saving last night. They worked to protect them all. I'm pretty sure that people who launch fireworks right next to firefighters already working a wildfire are people who are incapable of feeling shame. So I'll express it on their behalf. To the firefighters and dispatchers who were working so hard last night, thank you. Our apologies for the Coloradans who put on a display of ignorance while you all were working the 4th of July. You know, the best part about being an election denier is never having to say you've lost. Get your backside kicked from here to Mesa County and you just claim it was fraud. That's what conspiracy theorist Tina Peters is saying after she lost the Republican nomination for Secretary of State. Make no mistake, though, Peters is having an impact this election year because there are new election security rules from the Secretary of State's office designed to keep election deniers like Peters from tampering with the election equipment. Politics guy Marshall Zellinger takes a look.
Thanks to Republican Mesa County Clerk Tina Peters, there will now be specific rules as to who can and cannot access election equipment. Colorado's Democratic Secretary of State published 55 pages of new election rules to be implemented before the November election, including limits on who can attend the trusted build when election computers are updated ahead of the next election.
The Republican Party asked, and unfortunately the Secretary of State disagreed. We thought that it would be a good idea to have party-appointed watchers present for that.
Chris Murray is the general counsel for the Colorado Republican Party. He's understanding of many of the new rules, which also restrict county clerks from copying the entirety of the election equipment hard drives, like Peters and Republican Elbert County Clerk Dallas Schroeder admitted to doing, which led to court cases.
Have court fights, we've had those, right? And then the bureaucrats take over and they make really detailed rules to try and avoid future fights. I will say, in my experience as an attorney that works in this space, the more detailed rules actually tend to create more fights because it gives us more things to pick at and fight over.
Another new rule is about election watchers at ballot drop boxes.
We have no intention of violating anybody's rules or regulations, Tom.
In 2020, a so-called First Amendment auditor stood near a ballot drop box outside the Arapahoe County Administration Building, recording video of people turning in their ballots. That was not against the rules.
We want to protect our voters' right to vote without feeling intimidated or harassed or being prevented from voting in an unsafe manner.
Now, under the new rules, one election watcher from each party can stand near ballot drop boxes, as long as they go through training, are certified, wear a badge, and don't record video or take pictures.
Inside of a vote center, you can't have someone filming or getting too close to a voter, and those same rules will apply now to watchers that are at the 24-hour drop boxes.
I'm pretty sure he wasn't voting for himself, but dropping it off for someone else. Not to question the new rules, but what if Joe or Jane Public, who is not an official election watcher, hangs out near a ballot drop box on a public sidewalk, like a library, and records video of people dropping off ballots? That's still okay. Not all the proposed rules, though, Kyle, made it to the final draft. One rule that was considered would have given clerks the power to reject candidate nicknames that contain a political slogan or political speech, like the Republican who wanted the super secret code for you-know-what Joe Biden as his nickname on the ballot this year. A judge said no to that, but that did not make the final rule, so it would probably have to go to court again if someone wanted to try a funny nickname.
What happened to that congressional candidate? Did he get his tail whipped?
He did.
He did. Well, maybe a new nickname next time. Marshall, thank you. Political figures in Colorado who played key roles in trying to reject and overturn the 2020 election are now being subpoenaed by a grand jury investigating whether the Trump team broke Georgia state law. Attorneys Jenna Ellis and John Eastman are part of a group being brought before a special grand jury in Fulton County, Georgia. The subpoenas accuse both Ellis and Eastman of writing memos on how to overthrow American democracy. Ellis is also accused of showing so-called evidence of voter fraud in Georgia, debunked video of election workers handling quote-unquote unlawful ballots stuffed in suitcases. She showed that video to the Georgia State Senate in December of 2020. According to the subpoena, Georgia Secretary of State's office debunked that 24 hours later. Now, we've long known about John Eastman's memos, his instructions on how to overturn the election, instructions that Vice President Mike Pence refused to follow. The grand jury says Eastman appeared in front of lawmakers in Georgia in December of 2020, told them they had a duty to replace the state's presidential electors. The grand jury wants them and others, including Rudy Giuliani and South Carolina's Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, to come to Georgia to testify by next Tuesday. Summertime is a time when a lot of businesses are running lean on staff anyway, and COVID is stubbornly sticking around this summer, making a number of Coloradans sick enough they can't go to work. Omicron subvariants are still driving those cases. Weekly positivity rates have been hovering around 12% for a while now. We always watch hospitalizations with the caveat that that's a tricky number because at this point with this variant, we know how many people are going to hospitals for other stuff and then they just happen to test positive for COVID. But those numbers too have stayed consistent over much of the summer. As of June 27th, the state's tracking says about 3 people in Colorado continue to die from COVID each day.
The Forest Service says the 50th anniversary Rainbow Gathering is wrapping up. One thing that changed this year, the drugs. Colorado is struggling to hire enough teachers who look like their students.
We cannot have high-quality instruction without a diverse teaching workforce.
A new idea that could become a long-term solution. And trails reopening after wildfires are getting closed for a fresh reason. Closed a lot. That's next.
The Rainbow Gathering folks up in the woods of Routt County, they love natural stuff, except it would appear when it comes to drugs, because nature's got a couple of fantastic ways to get you high as a kite, but the Forest Service says it did not expect to see this year's big increase in a synthetic drug, fentanyl. Forest Service incident management team that's working with the Rainbows, as they're called, says there's still about 7,000 people up in the Adams Park area of Routt County. It's down from a peak of 10,000 people gathered over the weekend. The team says that even with the increase they have seen in fentanyl possession and distribution, they have not had to respond to any medical incidents related to drugs this year. Weather also impacted the gathering, but the Forest Service says no more so than in past years, really. Rain washed out some county roads into the gathering area. Certainly seemed convenient if counties didn't want 10,000 people camping out there for weeks, but Forest Service says no. It's not what it was about.
Routt County had to close a portion of the road 82 at the top end of the gathering due to several vehicles being stuck and the slick and muddy conditions. And then it dried out. And so they got some graders up there and helped improve those roads and the washout conditions that we were seeing. That's part of this cooperative effort that we work with our cooperators. Even despite it being an unauthorized gathering, it's still an incident occurring on the National Forest. And one of our big things is maintaining that ingress egress and making sure that, if there is a need to get ambulances or helicopters, whatever, into there, that we have that access.
It's all about that ingress and that egress, Forest Service says most of the gathering is now in the egress stage. That means they're leaving. But there are some staying back to work with the Forest Service on rehabilitating the land that they used. A small group of Rainbows typically stays back throughout the month of July, and they work to clear away their user-made trails and to help the soils and other areas bounce back from their presence there. There aren't nearly enough black teachers in Colorado. Most school districts in our state don't have a single black teacher. To attract more, Teach for America has teamed up with a nonprofit in Colorado Springs to offer $10,000 to new teachers of color. They're also working to create a community cohort to connect black teachers across Colorado. They're starting small, about a dozen new educators in the program this fall. But that's more than double the organization's typical recruiting class.
Sometimes the most intractable policy solutions don't require complex policy answers. It could be as simple as a salary incentive and a community to solve one of our biggest barriers in front of education today.
Teach for America is working with the nonprofit Sachs Foundation on this. The foundation has tried this approach before last year and said that they struggled to connect with black educators. The hope is that working with the established team at Teach for America might change that.
Right now we have a live look over downtown Denver where we had some light showers push through, but now everything is starting to calm down. We're at 76 degrees after a high of around 93 earlier today. It was another hot one. Winds are coming in at around 15 miles per hour. Those have calmed down a bit as well. We saw those winds coming in at around 25 miles per hour when those storms were pushing through. Most of the Front Range and Eastern Plains, though, now in the 80s. You can see those 70s out west. We are continuing to monitor a very, very active HD Doppler radar, especially with those storms that pushed through the Denver metro area. area, but we are still seeing the strongest storm across portions of the eastern plains. Here in Denver, things are really starting to wrap up. So as far as severe weather goes, we do still have this far northeastern corner of the state that's under this marginal risk for severe storms. We also had one confirmed tornado there earlier this afternoon in Logan County. So we're going to continue to watch for those locally heavy downpours, strong winds, hail, and even the possibility for tornadoes. As far as tomorrow's storms go, we do have a bigger area in this marginal risk that does reach its way toward Denver. So we're going to continue to watch for that over the next couple of days. Temperatures in the upper 80s, but everything moves out this weekend. We get really hot and really sunny. We're going to be flirting with 100 degrees this Saturday.
The trail to recovery after a wildfire is long, and there's a new twist and turn.
We can't control the flooding, we can't control the weather, but we can control where people are.
A tough decision made to keep people out of some newly reopened areas. Next.
Parts of High Valley Ranch in Boulder County have seen a lot over the last year and a half. That's where the Calwood fire burned in October 2020. It led to months of closures and some repairs, the last of which just wrapped up this weekend. So the final trails to reopen are on the south side of the area near Lyons. The main trailhead opened this Saturday and is expected to stay open with an asterisk. The trailhead closes at noon every day because of flash flooding concerns. Boulder County Open Space says the lot is in a drainage area between two creeks and it's at much higher risk after the fire.
Public's happy, we're happy, and really it took our staff all that time to make this place ready. We also had to do aerial mulching of the hillsides. So we actually had helicopter operations here for months, dropping wood chips on the heavily impacted hillsides and slopes. Yeah, and we had to reconstruct really the whole trailhead at the main lot because it was heavily impacted.
Boulder County says the folks who have been out there they've talked to have been pretty understanding about the closures. The encouragement's pretty basic. If you want to go hike the ranch, hike earlier in the morning. That's when the risk of storms is lower. We have a sign for you that confused some Coloradans who are traveling out of state. That and your feedback on fireworks next. It's a sign that's awful confusing if you know Colorado's license plates, because this was a photo taken by Lisa at a gift shop at Great Smoky Mountains National Park, like all the way out in Tennessee. Does that look familiar to you? You got the green mountains, the white backdrop. Yeah, that's a Colorado license plate is what that is. Apparently this is from a sticker company. It's based out of Minnesota. So what do they know? A lot of notes tonight about fireworks. Izzy writes in to say, if somebody's mad about what you said about those who set off fireworks and your hardworking firefighters, yeah, he's talking about you, and you deserve to be shamed. Deborah writes, you said it right. Being a child in a grown-up's body, the gall of the inconsiderate and selfish folks who set off fireworks over the heads of firefighters. Dee Dee writes in from northern Colorado to say that she just doesn't understand. She said she lives in a densely populated neighborhood in northern Colorado and saw it going off over everybody's houses. She says apparently Marshall Fire taught people nothing. Jacob and others wrote in deeply concerned about the state of my voice tonight. I appreciate the concern. I'm just on the tail end of a man cold. And if you know anything about man colds, they sound a lot more dramatic than they actually are. See you next time.